He fell. Not metaphorically, literally. Plummeting from the sky at a velocity that shouldn't leave survivors, Rudeus concentrated his magical energy, scanned the landscape reeling past him for somewhere that wasn't a mountain, ocean, or dense forest, and aimed for a stretch of reddish-brown earth. Then he lost consciousness. He woke up in a pure white void. Classic afterlife decor. He looked down at himself and went cold. He was back in his old body, the one he'd spent 34 years wearing. The body of the bitter, vile, insecure, selfish piece of trash from his previous life. 10 years as Rudeus. Gone. So it really was just a dream, huh? The crushing disappointment settled in with alarming ease. Of course it had been. Then a weirdo appeared. It had a blank, white face and a wide, unsettling grin. Every time he tried to focus on a specific feature, it slipped out of his memory. His mind refused to assemble an image of the larger whole, like the face was being hidden by a pixelated mosaic, like badly censored anime. So anyway, are you the mighty Sperman or something? The being communicated without visible mouth movement, but seemed to hear his thoughts just fine. The mighty Sperman? Who's that? Does he look like me? Totally. He's a big blurry mess of pixels, just like you. So there's someone like me in your world too? Well, no, not really. What? Okay, let's just move on. I'm a god, the man god specifically. Why would a god waste time chatting with me? And isn't this a little late in the story? The god's supposed to appear in the first chapter. The man god explained he'd been watching and had decided to take care of Rudeus. This set off every alarm bell Rudeus had. Anyone who pops up offering to fix your problems is a con man. He'd met people like that in his old life, people who said, just try your best, or I'll look out for you, none of whom understood the actual problem. He said as much. The man god offered advice instead. Rudeus compared him to MMO scammers. The man god whined that he wasn't a con man and grew increasingly desperate for a deity. Eventually, he hit on the one argument that worked. The demon continent was not a hospitable place. Scarce food, monsters everywhere. Rudeus was going to die without help. Reincarnation wasn't the man god's department. That was apparently the specialty of a certain wicked dragon god, but survival was something he could advise on. Rudeus capitulated. Fine. Advice. What was it? Soon after you awake, you'll see a man. Rely on him, and do what you can to help him. The blurred-out god disappeared. He woke up at night, stars above, fire crackling nearby. He checked his body, young Rudeus still intact. He'd been laid on bare, cracked earth. No vegetation. Total silence except for the fire. Demon continent. Right. He found Eris sleeping behind him, clutching his shirt, his staff Aquahartia beside her. No obvious injuries. He looked for Ghislaine and found someone else entirely. A man was sitting near the fire, staring at Rudeus, still and silent. He had emerald green hair, porcelain white skin, a red jewel embedded in his forehead, a long scar running across his face, and sharp features that radiated the kind of earned danger that can't be faked. A three-pronged spear lay at his side. Roxy, years ago, had been very clear on this subject. Don't talk to the Superd. Don't go anywhere near them. His instinct was to grab Eris and run. The man god's voice echoed in his head. Rely on him. He weighed these two pieces of advice, decided to trust neither of them, and instead looked carefully at the man's body language. Something about it was familiar. The way he held himself, cautious, anxious, reminded Rudeus of his sister slowly, timidly approaching a cat she wanted to pet. He's worried about frightening us. Hello there. Hello, so far so good. The man explained he'd found them after they fell from the sky and had made the fire to keep them warm, in a tone that suggested this was obvious. Are you blind, boy? Did your parents not teach you about the Superd? My master did, actually, but I think it would be impolite to fear a man who just helped me. The look of genuine bewilderment on the man's face was telling. He'd clearly been expecting screaming and running. Aren't you afraid of me? Not afraid. A little suspicious. He introduced himself. Rudeus Greyrat. The man, Ruijerd Superdia. Ruijerd said he was used to noisy children. He answered location questions. Biagoya region, northeast demon continent, near old Kishirisu castle, and had no idea who a man-god was. He'd take them back to Asura. A Superd warrior never goes back on his word. The northeast demon continent to Asura, Paris to Las Vegas. Without an airplane. Do you know the language here? Do you have any money? Do you know the roads? Rudeus could speak demon god and use magic to earn money. Ruijerd countered that abandoning children would blemish the Superd's honor. Well, I wouldn't want to disgrace such a proud people. Not to worry, we've already taken care of that ourselves. Ruijerd smiled slightly at that, genuine warmth, unlike the man-god's hollow grin. He reached out and timidly patted Rudeus on the head, with the relieved expression of someone who hadn't been certain until that moment the gesture would be accepted. A little while later, Eris's eyes snapped open, swept the scene, and landed on the man next to Rudeus. She tumbled backward, tried to run, her legs gave out, and she collapsed. What followed was several minutes of Eris Boreas Greyrat, the girl who'd fearlessly attacked an actual Sword King, lying in fetal position terror, wailing for Ghislaine, apologizing to Rudeus, crying she didn't want to die, and ultimately bawling incoherently into the dirt. That's a more typical reaction, Ruijerd observed. Rudeus walked over and started rubbing her back. She twitched at his footsteps. Come on, it's okay. Of course it's not okay. That man's a Superd. What's so scary about him, though? He's a Superd, stupid. They eat children while they're still alive. Hick. Rudeus turned to Ruijerd for confirmation. Ruijerd shook his head. We don't eat children, no. You hear that, Eris? But they're demons. Yes, but he speaks human just fine, fortunately. Look, that's not the point, okay? Eris jerked her head up, fire in her eyes for just a moment, then turned to look at Ruijerd, and immediately started trembling again. There were actual tears. You sure you want to stick your head up like that? Maybe he won't eat you if you stay curled up on the ground. Stop making fun of me. Infuriated by the teasing, Eris glared daggers at Ruijerd, then seemed to realize mid-glare who she was glaring at, and the effect was undercut somewhat by her knees visibly shaking. And nice to meet you, sir. I'm Eris Boreas Greyrat. Eris Boreas Greyrat, is it? You humans have taken to giving yourselves some peculiar names of late, it seems. No, it's Eris Boreas Greyrat. I just stuttered. Ruijerd responded to her introduction calmly, gave his own name, and bowed his head to her. Eris's face went from pale to relieved to retroactively confident in approximately 2 seconds. She decided she hadn't been scared at all, really, and announced she'd be his friend, if he insisted. Rudeus's mother is such a silly liar. Rudeus asked what she'd been told about the Superd. Hilda, it turned out, had been using them as a bedtime threat. They'd come to eat children unless they went to sleep on time. Classic boogeyman deployment. We could brag about making friends with one once we make it home. Oh, do you think Grandfather and Ghislaine would be impressed? Of course. Ruijerd bowed to Eris, and the girl's remaining defenses evaporated. Everything really was that simple with her. Rudeus curled up on the ground and let sleep take him. Eris draped something over him, Ruijerd's cape apparently. As he drifted off, he heard, "Are you not afraid of me anymore, girl? I'm fine. I've got Rudeus with me. Right, I'm getting her home safe no matter what." He slept. He dreamed of angels descending from the sky, peaceful enough until he noticed parts of them were hidden by pixelated mosaics. They drew closer. Giggled in unison. Creepy grins spread across their faces. He woke up. The demon continent in daylight was exactly as advertised. Virtually no vegetation. Terrain scarred by cracks and fissures, enormous rock slopes jutting up like stairs built for giants. Walking across it would take 3 times as long as the same distance on the central continent. Eris was staring at it with excitement in her eyes. The demon continent. What an adventure this is going to be. Let's move. Eris had apparently befriended Ruijerd entirely during the hour Rudeus was asleep. She chatted at him about her life, lessons, and sword fighting, made several borderline rude comments, and Ruijerd never took offense. Who said the Superd had a terrible temper? He heard Eris's voice go sharp. Rudeus isn't your older brother then? Of course not. But you share the name Greyrat. That is a family name, correct? That doesn't make him my brother. Was he born to a different mother? Sired by a different father? No, that's not it. I don't know how humans view these things, but you ought to be grateful that you have him. Look, you've just got the wrong idea. Regardless, be grateful that you have him. Of course I'm grateful. She's older than him, technically. He chose not to bring it up. Every 10 minutes or so, Ruijerd ordered them to stop, leapt over massive boulders, disappeared. came back with faint traces of blood on his trident. The jewel on his forehead apparently worked as radar, detecting threats ahead, eliminating them before they got close. Something roughly every 15 minutes. Eris noticed eventually. "Why do you keep running off like that?" "I'm dealing with the monsters on the road ahead of us." He parted his hair and showed her the red crystal. She flinched for a second, then stared at it with open curiosity. "That must come in handy." "I suppose it does, but at times I wish I didn't have one." "Well, I'll take it if you don't want it. Let me yank it off." "It's not quite that easy, I'm afraid." That was a joke, right, Eris? When Rudeus offered to help and use healing magic, Ruijerd patted his head again, same tentative gesture, same small moment of checking the reaction, and told him to stay with his little sister. "I'm not his little sister. I'm older." Ruijerd tried patting Eris. She slapped his hand away. 3 hours later, a village. About 10 or 15 houses, crude fencing, a small field inside. Eris announced, "Oh, it's a town." A boy with blue hair, the exact shade that reminded Rudeus of Roxy, stopped them at the gate, speaking rapidly in the demon god tongue. "Who are those two, Ruijerd?" Ruijerd explained they were the shooting stars from last night, victims of a magical disaster. The boy, Rowan, said he couldn't let suspicious strangers into the village. Ruijerd's face went stern and his hands closed into fists. Rudeus grabbed his arm before things escalated. "He's just doing his job. Why don't we ask him to fetch someone with actual authority?" Rowan closed his eyes, stood there silently for 10 seconds. "The Migurd can converse with others of their race, even at a distance," Ruijerd explained. "Telepathy. My master mentioned that." Roxy had also noted that she personally lacked this ability, which was presumably connected to why she'd left. Rudeus felt a small pang of sympathy for her. The village elder arrived, a bald man with a cane who looked disconcertingly youthful, accompanied by 2 girls who were either teenagers or adult Migurd. He couldn't tell. None of them were particularly tall. The Dictionary of Demonkind's illustration of the Migurd entry had looked exactly like a junior high student, which Rudeus had assumed was Roxy drawing herself and found charming at the time. He bowed to the elder. The man introduced himself as Roxy. Rudeus prompted Eris to introduce herself. She managed a textbook curtsy from her etiquette lessons, which made Roxy smile. He bowed back to her, the same way Rudeus had bowed to him, which seemed to delight her immensely. "Would you permit us entry to your village, Roxy?" The elder studied Rudeus intently, very intently, for a long moment, his eyes coming to rest on Rudeus's chest. "Sut it out! Cut it out! You're making me want to do a striptease." "Where did you obtain that pendant you're wearing, young man?" "It was a gift from my master." "And who was this master of yours, if I might ask?" "Her name was Roxy." "What?" Rowan shoved past the elder and grabbed Rudeus by the shoulders. Both of them were seized in a death grip. "Did you just say Roxy, boy?" "Yes, that's my master's name." Where is Roxy now? Please, tell me anything, Roxy. Roxy is my daughter." "Sorry, come again?" Rudeus looked at the boy who did not look old enough to be in high school. "You're Roxy's father." "Please just tell me. It's been more than 20 years since she left this village, and we haven't heard a word from her." 20 years. Rudeus decided he needed some information clarified before he said anything further. He also decided the man needed to stop squeezing his shoulders, and the most efficient path to that goal was asking for something first. "Actually, I want you to answer a question for me first. How old is Roxy right now?" "What? Why does that matter?" "It's very important. And while you're at it, how long do the Migurd live?" "Fine. Roxy would be 44 this year, and we live around 200 years for the most part." Rudeus processed this. 44. He was currently, mentally, 45. We're the same age. That makes me kind of happy, actually. "By the way, would you mind letting go of me?" Rowan released his grip. "As of 6 months ago, Roxy was in the kingdom of Sharon. We'd been exchanging letters. She's in perfectly good health." Rowan sank to his knees, tears shining in his eyes. "I see. So she's all right. She's all right. Haha. Thank goodness." Rudeus turned back to Roxy. "Now that we've cleared that up, would you be willing to let us inside?" "Of course." I probably could have saved a lot of time by just showing them the pendant from the start. Then again, showing up with a dead girl's pendant was its own kind of problem, especially among a people who lived 200 years and probably didn't have great intuitions about human age. He'd made the right call. The village, in daylight, was destitute, in the comfortable way of people who had made peace with their circumstances. Less than 20 houses, each built by digging into the earth and covering the whole with what looked exactly like a turtle's shell, because it was, in fact, a turtle's shell. Great tortoises, Ruijerd explained. Tough shells. Delicious meat. The one covering the elder's house had to be 60 feet long. The small field had rows of wilting, leafy plants. At the edges grew flowers with large, toothy mouths that gnashed together audibly. They bore an extremely specific resemblance to the deadly plants found lurking in green pipes in a certain video game franchise. Apparently they were placed there to protect the crops from animals. Presumably, the animals agreed. In the village elder's house, the largest shell, they gathered by a sunken hearth. The interior was spacious, decorated with furs and colourful art, bows and swords, arranged carefully near the walls. Eris, exhausted from the march and running on no sleep from the previous night, lasted approximately 2 minutes before starting to nod off. "You can take a nap if you want. I can handle the talking. But there aren't any pillows. Hey, my lap's available." She glared at him, but she was too tired to make it a real glare, and after a brief hesitation, she laid her head down and was asleep within seconds. Rudeus gently stroked her red hair. Roxy watched with a warm, amused smile. "You two certainly seem to get along." "Yes, absolutely. Hands-off mode for now, of course. The lady has firm ideas on the subject of chastity, and I'm not about to disrespect that." He explained their situation, names, ages, origins, the teleportation event, and left out the man-god entirely. No point in establishing himself as the messenger of a suspicious deity before he'd even gotten a meal. Ruijerd announced he'd be travelling with them and protecting them on the road home. The elder's expression changed. "And what purpose would that serve? You can't enter any towns, can you?" Ruijerd went quiet. Roxy explained, for Rudeus's benefit. 100 years ago, when a Superd had approached a city, the garrison had not merely refused entry, they'd formed a squad to hunt him down afterward. Systematically. Hunted a single man for being what he was. Ruijerd's counteroffer, he'd wait outside the city, and know nothing of what befalls these two within. That's no way to keep them safe. If anything should happen to them inside, I'd go in to rescue them, even if I had to kill everyone living in the city. He said it without heat, without bluster. He meant it literally, Roxy. There's no reasoning with you when children are involved. He noted, with the resigned wariness of someone who'd had this conversation before, that Ruijerd had originally earned the village's trust 5 years ago by rescuing a child from a monster. Ruijerd confirmed this. Roxy asked whether Ruijerd's goal, the goal that had kept him going all this time, could really be accomplished through violence. "His goal?" Rudeus asked. Roxy answered, "He wants to convince everyone that the Superd aren't the wicked monsters they're made out to be." Rudeus held his tongue. Managed not to say the obvious thing, which was that this seemed impossible. Systematic hatred that had spread across an entire world didn't yield to a single person's testimony, no matter how sincere. He'd seen witch hunts operate in his old world. Once a group was tagged as evil, the machinery of prejudice ran itself. Still, he asked the obvious follow-up, "But they attacked friends and enemies alike during the war, didn't they?" Ruijerd grabbed him by the shirt. "We were victims of Laplace's plot. The Superd are no race of monstrous beasts." He was shaking, not from anger at Rudeus, or not only that, from something older, deeper. "Would you mind telling me the whole story, Ruijerd? It's a long tale. I've got plenty of time." The Superd had served Laplace early and eagerly. Elite warriors, specialists in ambushes and night raids, impossible to surprise due to the jewel on their foreheads. The word Superd had once been spoken in respect and awe throughout the demon continent. Then Laplace presented gifts, the devil spears, jet-black tridents resembling the Superd's own weapons, but wrong in some quality obvious at first glance without being nameable. Several warriors objected. A Superd's spear was their heart and soul, but Laplace was their master. In the end, Ruijerd, then the group's leader, ordered them to comply, out of loyalty. "Did you say Ruijerd?" "Yes, I was their leader at the time." "How old are you right now?" "I lost track after I reached 500. The devil's spears were enormously powerful. They amplified physical ability several times over, nullified enemy magic, heightened the Superd's already sharp senses further. The Superd were nearly invincible, and gradually, utterly mad. The corruption grew with each drop of blood the spears tasted, in increments slow enough that no one noticed the change in themselves or the people around them. They lost the ability to distinguish friend from foe. They attacked everyone, human and demon alike, young and old. No mercy to anyone. At the height of their corruption, they smiled at being called bloodthirsty devils. 200 warriors. Surrounded by enemies, enduring near-constant battle, numbers slowly falling. None questioned the path. Death felt like bliss. A rumor, their home village was under attack. They went home, and attacked it. The logic was simple. They'd found people. Ruijerd murdered his parents, his wife, his sisters. His son was still young, but had trained to become a warrior. In his final moments, the boy grabbed his own trident and broke the devil's spear. The curse lifted. Ruijerd's first sensation was something hard and crunchy in his mouth. He realized what it was and spat it out in horror. His son's finger. His first thought was suicide. He pushed it away. There was one thing he had to do first. The village was surrounded by a demon army. Of the original 200, 10 remained, battered, missing limbs and eyes, and the jewels from their foreheads. Ruijerd snatched the devil's spears from his companions' hands and broke them one by one. As each curse lifted, the others came back to themselves, looked at what they'd done, and wept. No one blamed Ruijerd. They swore an oath against Laplace. Ruijerd survived the encirclement alone, badly wounded. The one thing he carried, his son's trident, with which the dead boy had saved his father. Years later, when the three legendary heroes moved against Laplace, Ruijerd jumped into the battle and managed to score a blow on his hated enemy. It wasn't enough to undo anything. The surviving Superd were persecuted and scattered. One by one, they died. He hadn't met another in nearly 300 years. Laplace was to blame for all of this. But I, too, bear responsibility for the disgrace I brought upon my people. Even if I am the last of my kind, I want to tell the world the truth. The story had been delivered without emotional appeal. Simple words in a flat voice, describing things that would break most people to even witness. If I took him at his word, Laplace gave them the devil's spears not out of generosity but as a calculated sacrifice. A scapegoat, someone to absorb the moral cost of wartime atrocities, leaving Laplace's reputation as liberator of demonkind intact. What a vile thing to do to people who had trusted him completely. All right, I'll help you as much as I can. The small voice in his head, survivor of 34 years of isolation, said, "Are you really in a position to help him? Focus on getting yourself home." He overrode it. "I don't have any real ideas, but maybe having a human child on your side will open up some new possibilities." It wasn't pure altruism. Ruijerd was a powerful fighter, in the same tier as the legendary three heroes, Roxy had implied, and he was offering protection. On the road, invaluable. In the cities, a liability. Find a way around the city problem, and this became an excellent partnership. Also, the man was constitutionally incapable of lying. He could feel it. "That's a promise, Ruijerd." Thank you," the man said, looking genuinely surprised. "I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. If he's tricking me, so be it." There was only one thing about this arrangement that made him uneasy. Namely, he was doing exactly what the man-god wanted.